Welcome back to Chatbots Behaving Badly, the show where the future arrives early, uninvited, and usually wearing somebody else's face. Today's story is about Grok, xAI's chatbot, and a feature that took about 5 minutes to become the internet's favorite harassment tool. This episode is called The Bikini Button That Broke Trust, written by Marcus Brinsa, narrated by Brian C. Lucian. Chatbots Behaving Badly is a research initiative in collaboration with Psychologist. In this episode, we discuss non-consensual, sexualized images and technology-facilitated abuse. No explicit descriptions, but the topic is still heavy. If that's not your day, skip this one and come back when we're yelling at a toaster that hallucinates warranty terms. All right, here's what happened, why it mattered, what the legal world did about it, and, most importantly, what the psychological fallout looks like for victims when an image gets turned into a weapon. Grok is integrated into X. It can generate and edit images. And users discovered that the edit image workflow could be used to create sexualized bikini edits and undressing-style manipulations of real people, often by taking a normal photo and prompting Grok to make the person appear more revealing. Now, the internet has always been full of creeps. That's not breaking news. The breaking news part was the distribution mechanism. On X, Grok could be invoked right where the target lives, under someone's post. A user posts a photo, someone else tags it Grok, asks for an edit, and the output shows up in the public thread. Shareable, quotable, screenshotable, and instantly viral. That's not just misuse. That's product design meeting human nature at high speed. Reuters documented how women reported their photos being manipulated in replies, and Reuters' own analysis found multiple instances of sexualized outputs, including some involving children. Reuters also reported that xAI's response to media inquiries at one point was essentially legacy media lies, and the story gets even more on brand for 2026. Reuters reported that Elon Musk initially appeared to poke fun at the controversy, responding with laugh-cry emojis to bikini-style AI edits of famous people, including himself. So while victims were saying, "This is harassment," the tone at the top looked closer to, "Relax, it's memes." Then came the pushback, and it was not subtle. Researchers started measuring what was happening. Journalists started testing what the tool could do. Governments started asking the questions that start with, "Please preserve all records," which is the bureaucratic version of, "We're not amused." Let's talk legal reality for a minute, because this is where the "it's just jokes" posture tends to collapse. In the UK, Ofcom opened a formal investigation into X under the Online Safety Act, focused on illegal content and whether the platform met its duties. In the EU, scrutiny connected to the Digital Services Act escalated as well, with regulators framing this as a systemic risk issue, not a one-off moderation hiccup. In the United States, California's Attorney General sent a cease and desist letter to xAI demanding it prevent Grok from generating sexualized deepfake images, particularly involving minors and people who did not consent. Across Asia-Pacific, we saw government action too. Malaysia temporarily blocked access to Grok, and reporting across outlets described restrictions, investigations, and warnings in multiple countries. Now here's the part that matters for anyone listening who thinks, "Okay, but isn't this just the user's fault?" Regulators don't only look at what users did, they look at what a platform made easy. They look at whether the risk was foreseeable and whether safeguards were adequate before the harm went viral. And nudification isn't some unforeseeable edge case. It's one of the most predictable abuses of generative image tools, because it's been a lucrative abuse market for years. So the legal backlash wasn't simply moral outrage. It was the system doing what it does when a product ships with a predictable misuse path, and the misuse becomes mass scale. Now, you can litigate this for years, and people will. But court filings don't capture the moment a person sees a manipulated version of their own body circulating in public. That's the part people underestimate. This isn't merely content. It's an identity violation. And the harm is not abstract. It's psychological, social, professional, and, depending on the target, physically unsafe. So let's shift to what this does to a person. I'm joined now by a psychologist who works with trauma in technology-facilitated abuse, Dr. Ellen McPherron. Ellen, welcome to Chatbots Behaving Badly.
Thank you. I wish it were under better circumstances, but I'm glad you're covering it.
Let's start basic. When a person becomes the target of a sexualized deepfake or a non-consensual edited image, what happens psychologically?
The most common reaction is a combination of shock, shame, and loss of control. Even when the person knows the image is fake, the brain often responds as if something real has been taken from them because socially and emotionally it has. A core element is humiliation, especially when the image is posted in a public context where others are reacting, sharing, commenting. The victim may experience hypervigilance, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and depressive symptoms. Research on image-based sexual abuse links victimization to outcomes like stress, anxiety, depression, and trauma-related symptoms.
So even if it's just pixels, it doesn't land like pixels.
Right, it's not just a fake image, it's a message. I can rewrite you in public. That produces fear and helplessness, and victims often anticipate secondary harms, workplace consequences, family reactions, stalking, harassment, or the feeling that the image will resurface forever. The permanence factor matters. If someone believes the image is uncontrollable, they may spiral into catastrophizing and social withdrawal.
There's also a kind of cognitive trap here. People hear deep fake and they think, well, everyone knows it's fake, so it shouldn't matter.
That's one of the cruel myths. Social consequences can be real even when the image is not. And the experience can still be traumatic because it's about violation, not authenticity. The American Academy of Pediatrics Youth Mental Health Guidance notes that victims of synthetic sexual imagery can experience serious emotional distress, including anxiety, depression, isolation, and fear about reputational harm.
And the other myth is the victim blame reflex.
Yes, the line, "Why did you post photos?" The research literature is very clear that victim blaming is common in this space and it compounds harm because it isolates the victim and turns a crime into a character judgment.
Let's talk about why this particular case, the Grok workflow, can be especially damaging.
Because it happened in public threads, that creates a social stage. The victim isn't just dealing with a private violation, they're dealing with a crowd reaction. The humiliation becomes performative. It can feel like being publicly stripped. Also, when it's tied to a mainstream platform and a mainstream AI tool, victims can feel there's no safe place online. That triggers avoidance behaviors, withdrawing from posting, deleting accounts, isolating from communities that used to be supportive.
If this happens to someone, what actually helps? Not platitudes. What helps?
The first goal is to restore a sense of agency. That usually means two things at once: practical action and emotional stabilization. On the practical side, document what you can, report it through the platform, and use trusted takedown pathways. For adults, there are tools like Stop NCII that create a fingerprint of the image to help participating platforms detect and remove it. For content involving minors, the NCMEC Take It Down service exists specifically for images created before age 18, including nude or partially nude images. And consumer guidance from public agencies like the FTC explains reporting and response options for non-consensual distribution of intimate images. On the emotional side, victims need grounding, support, and containment. That can be therapy, but it can also be a trusted person who helps you navigate the steps without having to stare at the content repeatedly.
So don't make the victim do the entire labor of fighting the fire.
Exactly. It's also important to reduce re-exposure. Victims often doom scroll their own abuse, which reinforces distress. If you need to monitor, delegate it to someone you trust. If you can't, set narrow time windows. And then there's the longer-term coping. Reframing the shame back onto the perpetrator. Shame is sticky. It convinces victims they did something wrong. The clinical work is helping them understand this was done to you.
Now, the part that's delicate. You mentioned earlier that people may want to change how they share online after something like this. But we don't want to slide into don't exist on the internet.
Right. We don't want to punish people for being visible, but risk reduction is not the same as moral judgment. Practical, non-shaming advice can include: be thoughtful about what you share publicly, especially high-resolution images. Use privacy controls. Consider limiting public photo access on accounts tied to your real name or workplace. And remember that anything public can be repurposed. That's not you caused it. That's the world contains bad actors and we plan accordingly.
It's like locking your door. You didn't invite burglars. You just live in reality.
Exactly.
Let's talk about prevention at the system level. What should a company do so this doesn't happen again?
The core concept is consent boundaries built into the product. If your tool can edit images of real people, you need strong default refusals for sexualized transformations. You also need friction, limiting public in-thread transformations, auditing, rate limits, and meaningful enforcement. You also need to treat nudify misuse as a primary risk, not an edge case.
Now, XAI did take steps after the backlash. The Associated Press reported XAI said it implemented measures to prevent editing images of real people into revealing clothing such as bikinis or underwear, and that it would geo-block the feature where it violates local laws. A P also reported XAI limited image creation or editing to paid subscribers, framing it as a way to deter abuse and trace violators. But multiple investigations raise questions about consistency. The Verge reported that while at Grok, reply-based generation looked restricted, free users could still access image editing through other pathways like the Edit Image button, the Grok tab, and the website/app. Wired similarly reported the problem was not fully fixed across surfaces. So the public takeaway was, the company tightened some doors, but not all doors. Doc, from a psychological standpoint, what does it do when the platform response looks hesitant or inconsistent?
It reinforces the victim's helplessness. If a victim reports something and the platform's actions are unclear, slow, or partial, the victim feels unsupported by the very system enabling the abuse. That can intensify anxiety and mistrust, and it can discourage future reporting.
We now also have the leadership messaging. Reuters reported the legacy media lies response from XAI and the early laugh cry emoji posture from Musk. In Time reported Musk defended himself by framing critics as pushing censorship and posted an AI-generated image of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in a bikini amid the controversy. Ellen, what does that do to public norms?
Leaders model what is socially acceptable. When leadership treats harm as a joke, it signals permission. Even if the company later paddles back and adds restrictions, the initial tone can validate perpetrators and further shame victims. It also discourages victims from seeking help because it tells them you won't be taken seriously.
Which is exactly the opposite of what a platform should signal when the abuse is sexualized and non-consensual.
Correct. Prevention isn't only technical, it's cultural. If the culture is edgy at any cost, safety becomes reactive theater.
So here's where we land. Grok Imagine didn't just generate images. It lowered the friction on a specific kind of harassment that is already widespread, turning real people into sexual content without consent. The legal system reacted because this wasn't subtle. The psychology matters because even fake images can cause very real harm. And the prevention lesson is not complicated. If you build tools that can rewrite people's bodies, you don't get to be surprised when abusers use them to hurt people. Ellen, thank you for joining.
Thank you for treating it seriously and still making it accessible.
That's the job. This was The Bikini Button That Broke the Trust, written by Marcus Brinsa, narrated by Brian C. Lucian. Chatbots Behaving Badly is a research initiative in collaboration with Psycuri. New episodes drop every Tuesday. If you want to support the show, share the episode with the one friend who still says, it's just the internet. And if you're building AI products, here's your free consulting. Consent is not a settings menu, it's the foundation. See you next Tuesday.